Okay folks, so this week I wanted to do a deck builder. I only have two. Now, while I think this is a very good game, it's a little too advanced for a gateway game. Eventually I'll get to doing a video on this, but not right now. We're going to start with Dominion, the granddaddy of the deck builders. Now, while I'm sure there was some games that did deck building before Dominion, this one shot the genre out into the stratosphere, with many, many more deck builders to follow. So in Dominion, you are the ruler over the lands, and you're looking to expand your lands. You will do this by buying different types of cards throughout the game in order to purchase victory point cards. At the end of the game, whoever has the most victory points wins the game. Okay, pretty simple. So, without further ado, here's the component video. Okay, in the box you get one insert organizer, 40 treasure cards, which consist of 30 gold, 40 silver, and 60 copper, 42 victory cards, which consist of 24 estate, 12 duchy, 12 province, and 12 garden cards. There's one trash card, 30 cursed cards, the rule book, which comes in two booklets, one the base rules and then one with a turn example and more advanced rules. You also get 24 types of kingdom cards, which consist of 10 cards in each pile. And finally, you get one randomizer card for every card in the box, which is differentiated from other cards by the blue border around the Dominion logos instead of the tan border. Okay, first thing we want to do to set up Dominion is take our copper cards here and deal 7 to each player. Then we'll put the deck aside. We'll be using them in a minute. Next, we want to deal each player 3 of these estate cards. Okay, again, we're going to put the rest of the cards to the side. We'll be using them in a minute. Okay, then players want to shuffle the cards that were just dealt to them and place that pile face down in front of them, drawing 5 cards out of that pile. Now we will set up the play area, known as the supply. Now every card in Dominion has a randomizer card, which is this card with the blue border around the Dominion logos, as opposed to the tan border around the Dominion logos. What I like to do is set the randomizer card for each pile of cards that we'll place in our supply here face down, so that it indicates that that pile has run out. We will then place the pile of that type of card on top of the randomizer card. First, we will set out all of the treasure cards. Okay, and I like to put them in ascending order from 1 to 3. Next, we will take our treasure cards, okay, which are estate, duchy, and province cards. And we will draw out a certain number of cards, depending on the amount of players. In a 2-player game, it would be 8 of each treasure card. In a 3 or 4-player game, it would be 12 of each player card. Okay? And just like the treasure cards, we will place the victory cards on top of the randomizer card of that particular type. Next, we have these curse cards, and you also have to draw down to a certain number depending on the players. In a 2-player game, it is 10 curse cards. In a 3-player game, it's 20 curse cards. And in a 4-player game, it's 30 curse cards. Okay, and again, we place them on top of the randomizer card. Next, we will place our trash card, which is a single card, in our supply here underneath our victory and treasure cards. Next, we will build the kingdom section of our play area, which is made up of action cards. In the base game, there are 24 of these different type of action cards. And there is also these victory cards called the Gardens. Okay, now out of these 24 different action cards, we have to decide on 10 of them to use in our game. There are several different ways we can do this. One is we could take the randomizer card for each of the different card types, give them a shuffle, and select 10 of them and place them out in the kingdom. Another way is to decide as a group which 10 to use. Or on the back of the rulebook for Dominion, they have a few suggested decks that you can use in your kingdom, the action card section of the game. Okay, we will be using this first game suggested deck for this video, with the exception of the remodel deck. Instead of using the remodel deck, we will be using the witch deck so you can see how curses work. So now I placed the randomizer card on the bottom of each pile, just like I did over here with the treasure and victory cards, and then placed the remaining pile on top. The final thing you have to do for setup is pick the first player, and you are ready to play Dominion. So now the object of Dominion is to gain as much victory points as you possibly can before either the province cards here run out or 3 piles of cards run out in your supply, which is basically the whole play area. To do this, you'll use these treasury cards here to buy action cards here to eventually gain a victory card. But the whole time your opponent will try to put curses on you in certain circumstances and stifle you at every chance along the way. Now, each player will start off with 10 cards, which consist of 7 copper cards and 3 estate cards. Okay? They will shuffle these cards up and place them face down in front of them, and this will be their deck. They will draw 5 cards from this deck to make up their hand. They will then use these 5 cards to play in front of them to gain cards out of their supply, which is broken up into treasure cards, victory cards, a trash card, curse card, which in the base game is only used with the witch card. And then finally, this section over here is their kingdom card, which in most cases are action cards. However, in the base game, you can use 1 additional victory card in your kingdom to buy for additional benefits in victory points. You're always going to use treasury cards, victory cards, and curse cards, along with the trash card, in any game you decide to play. However, your kingdom cards here, your action cards, can be customized to any way you want to do it. You could use the back of the manual, which has suggested decks to use, or you could choose to take 10 different types of action cards in the base game box, as long as players agree up front that they want to do that. The final way you can choose to customize your kingdom is with these randomization cards. As you can see, the back of the normal cards has this tan border around it, where the randomization card has this blue border. You would simply gather 1 randomization card from each of the separate decks in the game, shuffle them together, draw out 10, and place them up any way you wish to. I normally do them by cost of the card, and we'll get into how to determine the cost of the card in a second. Now, each card in your kingdom, each card type in your kingdom has 10 cards in it, plus this 11th card, which is the randomizer. Okay, now I normally put this face down on the table and then place the remaining 10 cards on top, just so it makes it easier to tell that that pile has been depleted. The whole goal of the game is to gain victory points, and you do this by playing the game in 2 different ways. In the beginning of the game, you want to concentrate mainly on getting these treasure cards to buy action cards and eventually get up to victory cards. Okay? The whole time you may want to attack your opponent to slow them down, and then at one point in time you're going to decide to change over and focus mainly on victory points. Now, all the cards in Dominion read the same. They all have the name up top, followed by the type of card on the bottom there, and then in the middle they will tell you what the card does. And all of them have a symbol with a number on it in the bottom left corner of the card. That tells you how much the card costs to purchase. Now with treasure cards, we have the name of the card and then 2 coin symbols on either side of the name with a number in them. Okay, and that corresponds with the coin symbol with the shield and number on it in the middle of the card. That tells you how much the card is worth. And then below that, we have what type of card it is, in this case a treasure. And on the bottom left, we have a coin symbol with a number, and that tells you how much it costs to buy this card. And there is also a symbol on the bottom right of the card, and that tells you what expansion of the game this is for. In the case of the base game, it looks like a little castle. So treasure cards have a value of 1, 2, and 3, and they cost either 0 coins to buy, as in case with the copper, 3 coins to buy, as in case with the silver, or 6 coins to buy, as in case with the gold. The victory cards are similar to the treasure cards, where they have the name up top, followed by what they do in the center, and you'll see there's a shield, which represents victory points, and a number to the left of the shield, which represents how many victory points that card is worth. And then below that, we have what type of card it is, and then, like all cards in Dominion, on the bottom left, it'll tell you how much it costs to buy this card. The victory points come in 1, 3, and 6. The estate will cost 2 coins to buy. The duchy would cost 5 coins to buy, and finally the province would cost 8 coins to buy. Now the curse cards are similar to the victory cards, with the exception that instead of giving you a victory point, they will subtract a victory point from your total at the end of the game. As I said, the only card that will allow you to deploy a curse on another player is the Witch, and we'll get into that in a few seconds. The final card here is the trash card. Now the trash card has no value and it has no cost. It is only meant to eliminate a card from the game. There are several action cards that will allow you to use the trash card, usually to eject a card from the game in order to gain a benefit. The setup of an action card is similar to the treasury and victory cards, with the exception that the action cards have some artwork and below that they have an ability for that particular card. Now, most cards are going to be straight action cards, which is indicated on the bottom of the card. However, there are also attack cards, which look the same as an action card, with the exception that on the bottom where it says action, it'll also say attack next to that. And the action cards are broken down even further in the case of a reaction card. In the base game, the only reaction card is emote. Okay, now they look similar to any other action card, but on the bottom where it says action, next to it, it'll also say reaction. And these are used to counteract against an attack from your opponent. Attack cards are used to slow your opponent down in some way. So, how is the game played, you may ask? Well, this is how. In the beginning of the game, each player will be handed 10 cards, which consist of 7 copper cards, worth 1 coin, and 3 estate cards, which is worth 1 victory point. They will then shuffle these cards up and place them face down in front of them, and now this will be called the deck. And then they will draw 5 cards out of this deck, and they will become their hand. So at the beginning of every turn, they will start with 5 cards in their hand. Their hand is kept secret from the other players. Okay? So, there's 3 phases in the game. There's A, the action game. Now in the first couple rounds sometimes, you don't have any action cards. So, you skip that on your first few rounds. Then you have B, which is buy phase. Now, every game you have one action and one buy per turn, unless one of the action cards tell you differently. Okay, so being that this player has no action cards, but they have 3 copper cards, they could buy 1 card for 3 coins. They would play those 3 cards in front of them, showing that they are playing them face up. They would then come over to the supply here, and they could buy any card worth 3 coins or less. Remember, how much the card cost is down here in the left corner of the card. So for 3 coins in this particular game, this player could buy the woodcutter, the village, the workshop, the cellar, or the moat. So let's say this player decided to buy the woodcutter. Now remember, I said you could only have 1 action and 1 buy during most games unless the card tells you otherwise. The woodcutter here allows you to have an additional buy plus 2 coins. So when the player draws this card in her hand and plays it, they will then be able to have 2 buys instead of just 1, and they will get an additional 2 coin on top of any treasury cards they have in their hand. Now once you buy a card, you will put it in a discard pile, which will be face up. Okay? And I like to keep my draw pile on the left, my discard pile on the right. It's my preference. You can do things different. It's up to you. Okay, so now, after you have done your action and your buy phase, you go to the C phase, the cleanup phase. ABC. Real easy to remember. What you will do there is discard any unused cards that are left in your hand and any cards that you played in front of you into the discard pile. You will then draw 5 new cards from your draw deck and place them in your hand. If, however, say you can only draw 4 new cards from your deck, you would then shuffle your discard pile and then draw however many cards you need to come up to a 5-card hand. At the beginning of your turn, you must always have 5 cards in your hand. Now, in the beginning of the game, these victory cards are going to be dead weight. Okay, most cases, you're going to focus mainly on getting treasure cards in order to buy actions, in order to later on switch your mode of thought and buy victory cards to get the most points in the game. So after the first few rounds, you'll start gaining action cards in your hand. Now normally you only have 1 action per turn, but as you can see, some of these action cards will allow you to have more than 1 action. And you can do combos on these action cards. For instance, the market here. If we played the market card on our action phase, we would then draw 1 card from our draw pile and put it in our hand. Then we would move down to the next section of the card, which says we could play an additional action. So we could then play this village card, which will allow us to gain 1 more card, to draw 1 more card from our draw deck, and then play 2 more actions. We can then decide to play this witch card, which will allow us to draw 2 more cards, and then place a curse card on our opponent. We give this to our opponent, they would put it in their discard pile. Okay, and then this would also allow us to play 1 additional action. So we could play this militia card, which would give us 2 gold, and then our opponent would have to take 2 cards out of their hand and throw it in their discard pile, bring them down to 3 cards in their hand. Okay, and then we would move into the buy phase, which in this case would, with the market, would give us 1 additional buy, so we could have 2 buys instead of just 1, and it would also give us these coins. So would the militia card here. So this player would have 3 coins on top of whatever that player had in their hand. In this case 4, for a total of 7. And they could then have 2 buys where they would split up the action cards with either 3 coins and 4 coins, 1 card for 3 coins, 1 card for 4 coins, or they could split up any combination as long as it's at or under the 7 coins they have. So in this case, the player has 7 coins with 2 buys, so she will decide to buy this militia card, which will leave her 3 coins, and then this workshop card. She will then put these 2 cards in her discard pile and then discard any cards she played and any cards remaining in her hand, and then draw back up to 5 cards. Now, as long as you have a buy left, you could buy a copper card which costs 0 coins, but you must have a buy in order to do so. Now, every so often, a player will play an attack card on you, as in the case with this militia. And the attack on the militia is your opponent, whoever you pick, has to discard his hand down to 3 cards. However, your opponent may play this reaction card, in this case a moat, to counteract the attack card. And to do this, all they have to do is show the other player that they have the reaction card and then place that back in their deck. Unlike an attack card, it is not an action, so you don't have to place it and then discard it. They could do a reaction card at any time they wish, just revealing it and then placing it back in their hand. Now, there are some action cards that will allow you to trash a card, like this mine here. In this case, with the mine, you can trash one of your treasure cards and then gain another treasure card that costs up to 3 coins more than the card that you trashed. Now, trashing is different than discarding. When you discard, you place your used cards in a pile face up, and then later on you will take this discarded pile when you run out of your draw deck and shuffle them up to form another draw deck. When you trash a card, you place it on top of this trash card here, and it is eliminated from the game. No other player could go back in there and take that card and put it in their hand or discard pile. Essentially, it's out of the game. Now, if a player plays an action card that has gain in the wording on it, as in the case with this workshop, that means you will take a card from the supply and place it face up in the discard pile, not in your hand. Okay, so once your turn is over, it moves on to the next player, and they do the same. Now this will continue until either the province cards have been exhausted, or any 3 piles in your supply are empty. Once you have depleted either all the province cards or 3 other piles of cards from your supply, you will add up your victory points, subtract any curses, and then the player with the most points will win the game. If there is a tie, the player who took the least amount of turns will win the game. Meaning, if the first player triggered the end of the game, the second player would win because they had 1 less turn than the first player. And that's how you play Dominion.